Hi, I'm Josh.
I'm Carla. We met when we were very young, working at a Christian summer camp together. We became really fast friends, leading worship, and were dating and talking about marriage by the end of the summer.
Well, I think we knew things were getting more serious pretty quickly. We fell in love pretty quick. I think we both saw a future together, and by the end of that summer, I think we knew that there was definitely a long future for us.
Yeah, just a year and a half after that we were engaged, and just over 2 years of dating, we were married. And I was 20 years old, and he was only 22, so we were pretty young.
Yeah.
Just over 2 years into our marriage, I felt like Josh was just kind of being different and distant. And he came to me one day and just out of the blue said, I don't think I'm gonna lead worship anymore, and I don't really want to go to church anymore, and actually I don't believe this, and I'm not gonna pretend like I do.
Yeah, so for Carla, it was obviously out of the blue and very unexpected, but for me, it was just kind of the boiling over of a lot of deeper doubt and issues that had kind of manifested themselves in my heart for my entire life. I was kind of just going through this motion, and I was so good at being like a method actor Christian that I kind of lost sight of who God really was. And it got to the point that I didn't even really, internally, believe that God existed. I think that moment, even though it was kind of a really difficult, dark moment for us, was in a sense a turning point, at least for me personally, because I finally was honest with somebody about where my heart was. And even though I was pointed in a really tragic direction, at least I was honest about the direction that I was going in. And I wasn't being the worship pastor, youth pastor, like a kind of actor. It was like, okay, I'm gonna face my issues and I'm gonna deal with the doubt. And at the time it was, I don't believe in God, so I'm out. And that was the moment that I walked away from faith, from Christianity, from church. And it was an adjustment for us.
Yeah, unfortunately, with that honesty, there were a lot of other things that came to surface that I was unaware of. Just things that Josh was feeling and thinking and doing that he had kept from me. And so that led to a time where we were separated briefly and kind of had to consider how or if we could move forward, since that trust had been broken on my end or on your end.
I wanted to do what I felt like I'd been robbed of my entire life. That was really what it came down to. I felt like I had missed out. And so I started chasing after those things. And unfortunately, those things were detrimental to our relationship and caused that separation.
So we were separated for a little bit, and then decided that we would be able to move forward together in a new kind of relationship where we were unequally yoked. About a year, just over a year from that original conversation, I kind of noticed that Josh was pulling away again and was just very distant. And at that point, I kind of just stopped trying to be the one to fill that distance. And we got to a point where we were not functioning as a couple, let alone, hardly even roommates. We were living in separate rooms. We weren't talking. We had lost all common ground. And
then I remember one night, just sitting down and saying, I want a divorce. I want out. I feel like that everything has been just rooted in stuff that I just don't believe anymore, and I don't want to do this anymore. And I just felt like that was the direction that I wanted to go, and the direction I didn't care if anybody else wanted to tell me otherwise. That was where that's what I wanted to do. And that was a dark night.
In that conversation, a lot of his feelings and things that he was doing and keeping from me again had come up. And within 12 hours of having that conversation, I had filed for divorce and he had moved out.
And so it kind of ended. And like Carla said, it was very abrupt and it was painful. And I still think back on that evening, and it definitely hurts, but it was again part of this path of honesty, but also, like, for me it was destruction. Like I was going down a road, whether I admitted it at the time or not, that did not end in a good way. But at the time I thought that was the road. I thought I was being honest with myself. I thought I was being me. I thought I was getting what I deserved. And so I just tried to cope even more, honestly. I tried to numb that pain even more. And I remember a friend who I was honest with about this, a friend telling me, "Have you tried praying?" And I was a little frustrated when they asked me that, because I told them that I wanted to walk away from the faith, that I wanted nothing to do with it. And yet that still resonated in my mind. And so one night I did. And it wasn't the textbook storybook prayer that you would think. It was just like literal screaming at God. And at the end of that screaming match, I felt nothing but silence. And then in that silence, it was almost as if someone spoke to me and said, "My grace is sufficient for you." And then suddenly there was this calling to me, this pursuing, and I could feel God chasing my heart. I started to share that with people, and I knew people would be skeptical because I had been this, big Christian ministry guy for a long time, but I just started to share with people my heart. And the most important person that I wanted to share my heart with was Carla. And I remember writing a letter, because I didn't know how to do it. I asked people, I was like, she doesn't want to talk to me, and rightfully so. How do I share that with her? And so I remember writing a letter and leaving it at the house, and just telling her my story.
As devastating and heartbreaking as it was to sit and look my husband in the eyes and say, "We're getting a divorce," and the weeks that followed it honestly felt relieving and heartbreaking at the same time, because I was grieving the loss of this life that I thought I was going to have, this life that my husband and I had agreed to, but at the same time was relieving. So one night I came home and Josh had left a letter at the house for me. And in this letter, he basically told me, "I know I've hurt you. I know you don't want to hear this, but I've come to Christ and it's real and it's different. And I just wanted you to know." And I remember reading that letter over and over and shaking my head and saying out loud, what am I supposed to do with this? And it honestly made me a little bit angry, because what am I supposed to do with this? It doesn't matter now. And I had to come to the conclusion that it didn't change anything. The only thing that it changed was where Josh was going to spend eternity. But it didn't change the heartbreak, it didn't change the pain, the lack of trust, the betrayal. It didn't change where we were.
And I was praying constantly, not for our marriage to be restored, but for God to be with her and to be near to her and to be clear to her. And those were things that I was praying, and I did not pray once for our marriage to be restored in those first few weeks. It was, "God, I just want you to be with her." And I remember the time that I did pray for our marriage, and I remember going to the spot that we got married, and I was just struggling so much with this being apart. And I remember begging God that, God, I haven't asked you for this one time, but this one time I am asking you for this. I'm asking that you would restore our hearts and that we would be found in you together.
Yeah, and that restoration took place through a lot of really hard and vulnerable conversations, as well as so many just amazing mentors and people that came around us to keep us accountable.
So obviously, and we sit here together recounting this story, and I think in the months past, and the year past, I think we've witnessed this miracle continue to grow, and witnessed how the gospel has changed my heart, but not just changed my heart to now just, well, I'm a Christian now and we can be back together and we'll just kind of go back through the motions, but to like actually like love each other in a way that Jesus loves the church, and that, not to be cliche or some Bible verse that's on a painting on a wall somewhere, but like that's actually what we're striving for, and how the grace that God has had for us and how that's brought us together. And so this story is, yes, it's our story, but really it doesn't have anything to do with, Carla or I, because if it had something to do with me, we wouldn't be sharing this.
Yeah.
I'd probably be dead and gone, honestly. I think there was the direction that I was going was just one of destruction. And the fact that God in His grace chased my heart down and wrestled with me, not in a like super like feel good way, in a very painful, vulnerable way, and brought me to a place to acknowledge Him first and foremost, is mind-blowing. And so to be able to sit here and recount of God's grace in our life, and for this story, our story, to be His story, I think is really the whole goal. It's the be-all, end-all for us. And He's been so good to us, even in that pain, even in that heartache. He's been so good.
I think through this whole process, I never once doubted that the ending of my story would be good or glorifying to God. But there were times when I didn't believe that Josh would come back to Christ, or that our marriage would be restored, and I was okay with that, because either way God would be good and He would be glorified. But in His kindness, He restored to us what was broken, and He didn't have to do that, and if He hadn't, He still would have been good. But in His kindness, He brought us back together and has since blessed us with our baby daughter.
Yeah. There's no way that this story ends without God in a way that is anything close to good. I think the only way, truly the supernatural anointed hand of God has moved in our lives, and individually and collectively. And that's really all that we want to be a testament of, is God's grace and His goodness and how He's moved in our life. And so we just want to share that love with each other and with those around us. And yes, there have been so many miracles that have even come over the last few months and over the year. And as Carla said, I'm just thankful for the people around us who have walked with us through fire and through flood and have been faithful to us, kind of reflecting a picture of Jesus and grace and love to us as well. I can't thank those people enough, and how they've impacted our lives and been really used by God in a mighty way.
Yeah. Without God, Josh wouldn't be who he is, and I would not have had the strength to forgive. So without God, we wouldn't be here. And that's why we're telling this story.